Hello everyone, my name is Jackie and today I'm going to show you all the books I read in July. So I finished 12 books in July and I DNF'd one, and we're going to go right into it. So the first book I finished is Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Dark Artifices trilogy, and it's about Emma Carstairs and her papa Julian Blackthorn and the rest of Julian's family. They live in the LA Institute, and because their parents are dead, Julian is the kind of parent to his younger siblings. And yeah, in the first one there were some murders they had to solve, but there are also the feelings between Emma and Julian, which make things really complicated. My favorite part about this series is by far the Blackthorn family. They're such an amazing group. I love the dynamic between the siblings and it's just great. And we get some more in here. And yeah, but the ending had me, well, I need to finish this trilogy. And I gave this 4 stars. So the second book I finished is How Not to Ask a Boy to Prom by S.G. Gosley, which is about Nolan, who is 16 and he has a crush on a boy called Cy, and his adoptive sister forces him to ask Cy out in in the most embarrassing way imaginable in front of a class. So everyone's surprised in the classroom and the guy saying yes isn't Cy, but a boy called Byrne, who Nolan hasn't had the greatest history with. But they both decide to fake date until prom, and overall it was fun to read, but it wasn't my favorite book. The relationship between the very pushy adoptive sister and Nolan is a bit weird. Then Nolan himself is not really a character I like. He's very self-absorbed and self-centered, and there are some parts in here that so overall I enjoyed it. It was fun, but it's not a new favorite. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. The next book is The Falling in Love Montage by Kiara Smith, which is about Saoirse and Ruby. And Saoirse's girlfriend just broke up with her, so she is not interested in a relationship at the moment. But Ruby, who is a rom-com geek, convinces her that over the summer they are kind of doing a love montage like they're happening in rom-coms. So both of them know exactly on which day their relationship will end, so they're just going to do the fun stuff that you get to see in the Falling in Love montage. But of course, at the end of the Falling in Love montage, the people in them are always in love. So there's some stuff happening that's not working out the way they wanted to. And I enjoyed this book so much. It's so fun. The two of them are just really great. They're really cute together. And there are a lot of rom-coms in here, mentioned in here. A lot of scenes and sentences from movies. For a lot of them I don't even know where they're coming from, but in the back we have a very long list of rom-coms, and I'm pretty sure everything in here happens in one of those movies, so I kind of want to watch at least some of them after reading this. It's just, I enjoyed this book so much. I gave it 5 stars. And the next book I read is A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Camera. This is the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely. And A Curse So Dark and Lonely is a Beauty and the Beast retelling about Harper, who gets kidnapped from our world and brought into this fantasy world where she has to break the curse on Prince Ren. The second book mainly follows Grey, who has been the sole surviving soldier who had stayed with Ren during the curse. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I wasn't entirely sure if I would, because Grey wasn't really my favorite character in the first book. Yeah, we learned a lot of new things too about Ren, and my opinion of him changed too. So it was really interesting, and I can't wait for the third book in the trilogy. And I gave this 4 stars. So the next book I finished is another new favorite, and that's Girl Serpent Form by Melissa Becherdost, which is about Soraya, who is a princess, but she's under a curse and everyone she touches dies. So she is the princess of the story, but she's also the monster of the story, and normally that shouldn't be possible. So I don't want to spoil you, so I'm not saying anything more about the synopsis, but I absolutely adore the book. I adore the relationships. If you want to know, this is another book with a female romance in it, so that's great. Yeah, I also adore the cover. This is the Fairy Loot exclusive edition. In the original, the background is, I think, white or something. And both editions are just so gorgeous. I absolutely adore this book, and I gave it 5 stars. So the next book I don't own a physical copy of because I listened to the audiobook, but it's Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is a fictional biography, kind of, about a band called The Six and Daisy Jones, who was part of the band for a while. It was interesting. I hadn't originally planned on reading that book and decided to, but I had an Audible credit and decided on a whim to try it out, and I enjoyed it. None of the characters are really likable, to be honest, but the full cast audiobook was absolutely amazing. Although I have to say, listening to it while doing stuff, I missed quite a bit, so I enjoyed it. Not as much as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by her, so I decided to give it 3 out of 5 stars, but I'm planning to purchase an actual copy and read it physically to get more out of it, to just get more information. Also, I'm really excited for the Netflix series. I definitely want to watch that. And next I finally finished the Magnus Chase series with Magnus Chase and the Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan, the 3rd and final book in the series. And the Magnus Chase series is inspired by Northern mythology, and it's, as always, just so much fun. So our main character Magnus Chase, at the beginning of the 1st book, he dies and becomes an Einherji, how are they pronounced? Inherji? I don't know. It's a very complicated word. So, and the books lead up to him having to stop Ragnarok, which is the end of the world. It's a very diverse cast. We have Valkyrie, who is Muslim. We have Alex Fierro, who is gender fluid, and literally gender fluid, the body changes. We have Deaf Elf, and so many amazing characters in here. It's so much fun. It's very weird too, but that's just Rick Riordan. It's been a while since I read the first 2 books, so I didn't remember how weird some of the adventures were, how weird they got out of it again. I think I enjoyed the first 2 more when I first read them than I did this, so in the end I gave it 3 stars. Alright, so the next book I finally finished is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J Maas. I was in a reading slump when this came out, and I was so annoyed because I wanted to read it so badly and I couldn't. But now I finished it and I love it. So it's about Bryce, and she is halfway in a world that's very much like ours, but it was invaded thousands of years ago by angels and shifters and fae and demons and whatever else. And yeah, something happens that changes her whole life, but I won't tell you what because it's a spoiler. But afterwards, I can tell you that she has to work together with an angel called Hunt, and those two have a very interesting relationship that I absolutely adored. I also adore her best friend Danica and the whole world building and magic system in here. It's very complex. There are a lot of things in this book that normally aren't part of the same world, the same fantasy world. I think I've never read a book with fae and angels in them. Then there are vampires too, I forgot that. So it's very complex, this world, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars and I really want to read the second one immediately. So hopefully we won't have to wait too long for it. Another book I finally managed to read is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. This is about a witch and a witch hunter who are forced to marry. So Lou is a witch, but she ran away from her family 2 years ago, and Reed is a witch hunter, and due to some circumstances they are forced to marry, and Lou uses that to protect herself. And it's very complicated because Reed of course hates witches, and for him witches aren't people, they're just something dangerous, and every witch has to get killed. So Lou has to keep this a secret from him, but their feelings for each other, it's just very complicated. I heard a lot of people saying they love this and a lot of people criticizing it. And one thing I heard mentioned a lot is that it didn't make sense when they fell in love. And I kind of see that, because while they've been together for a while, by that point we don't get to see that time. There is a time jump in between, and that's where their feelings change, and it's a bit weird. But overall I enjoyed it. I also enjoyed the magic system where you have to give something to get something. So for example, at the beginning Lou breaks open a lock and with her magic, and it breaks her finger. And then there are of course other magics in there too. There are blood witches in there too who have to use blood for their magic, and it's just overall very interesting, and I can't wait for the second one, and I gave this 4 stars. The next book I read is The Witch Doesn't Burn, and this one by Amanda Lovelace. This is a poetry collection in her, I think it's called Women Are a Different Kind of Magic. No. It's the second book in her Women Are Some Kind of Magic series. Yeah, I'm not good at talking about poetry books because I normally don't read anything at all. But I enjoy Amanda Lovelace books, but I can't really talk about them because I really don't have the vocabulary to do so. I don't know how to talk about poetry books. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book, but there are a lot of trigger warnings in here, so just in case you're interested, I'm going to tell you the trigger warnings. So it's trigger warnings for child abuse, intimate partner abuse, sexual assault, eating disorders, trauma, death, murder, violence, fire, menstruation, transphobia, and even more. So yeah, but I enjoyed this and I gave it 5 stars. Alright, so the next book is at the same time easier and more complicated to talk about because it's Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Renee Addo Lodge. So I picked this up because after the Black Lives Matter movement blew up like this in June, I wanted to know a bit more about it and how racism actually looks like. This is by a British author, so it's of course very concentrated on Britain, but it was very interesting to read. It was very hard to read from time to time. Some of the things Renee Addo Lodge mentions in here happened 40 years ago. It's not been that long, and it's shocking to see, and it's devastating, and I really don't know yet how to talk about this book. But if you want to read into it, if you want books about racism, I would really encourage you to read this book. I really can't tell you how accurate it is because it's not something I know anything about, but it's a very important book in my opinion. And I was thinking about not rating it because I couldn't tell you how accurate it is, but on the other hand, the way Goodreads works, I thought it might be better if I helped the book along a bit, so I gave it 5 stars. Not only to help it along, but also because I really think it's an important book. Alright, the next book was the book I DNF'd, and it's this little book that I have in German, and it would roughly translate to The Art of Mindful Cleaning. It's by a Buddhist priest. I thought it could be interesting. I got this as a present for Christmas, and I thought maybe it could help me to figure out how it would be easier for myself to keep my living space clean. But this book is so focused on their lives at the temple and how they work that it just isn't something I can actually use. So I read, I think, 50 pages of the 150 in this book, and then I gave up because sadly it's nothing I can work with. And the last book I finished was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I reread this book as an audiobook because it's been ages since I read it and I want to read Niece of Nightmares. And it's about Laszlo Strange, who is an orphan and he works at a library, and he's fascinated by this city called Weep, which a couple of years ago the name just disappeared and only Weep remained. And he's fascinated with this secret, but no one takes him seriously. And then one day a delegation from Weep arrives asking for help, and Laszlo gets the chance to go with them. And it's an amazing story. I enjoyed so much. I like Laszlo as a character. I like Weep as a whole. I like the very complicated problem Weep has that has to be solved. The very complicated relationships I can't talk about without spoiling are done really well. I mean, I absolutely adore this book, and I gave it 5 stars. So those were all the books I read in July, and I'm really happy overall with that. If you've read any of those books, let me know down below what you thought, and I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!